We have Gavin's remains.
Today we're in Palmdale, California, where a man and his dog are going for a routine mountain hike. The date, October 26, 2013. During this hike, they would make a horrifying discovery. The man Rocky and his dog Buddy would be going along a mountain trail when they stumbled across the remains of a human skull. This discovery would not only leave an impression on them for the rest of their lives, but it would also bring closure to a 1.5 year long unsolved missing persons case. The remains were that of a man named Gavin Smith, who was a family man that seemed to have it all. He had a reputable job, good looks, and what most would consider the picture-perfect family. So how does a man like that go from living the American dream to having gone missing over a year and his skeletal remains found in the mountains nowhere near home? To answer these and many other questions, let's take a look at the life of Gavin Smith. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm AJ and this is your dose of true crime. I cover all things true crime, so if that is your cup of tea or coffee, consider subscribing to the channel after watching or listening to today's story. And at the end of every video, I also have a playlist that pops up so you can binge watch all of my other content. So today I kind of felt like doing my makeup. Like, it's Saturday and I want to be cute. So I'm going to be doing my makeup while I tell you today's story. Now, in case I don't put the list of products down in the description box, I'm going to blow through the products I'm using and then we'll get into the story. So for moisturizer, I'm using the Ultra Repair Cream. See, I don't like doing the product shots because my light is so freaking bright and I have it on the lowest setting. But I'm using the Ultra Repair Cream for moisturizer. For primer, I'm using two. I'm using the Professional Primer from Benefit. And then I'm also using Baby Skin from Maybelline. For under eye concealer, I'm using one of my favorites right now, which is the CoverGirl concealer. It looks like this. And this is in the shade Golden Caramel. Now, I'm not trying to go super ultra bright because that's more for like a nighttime look. So I am going to tone it down a little bit with this Fenty foundation, which is too red of an undertone, but this is more of a yellow concealer. So the two should cancel each other out and give me like the perfect amount of under eye glow. And then I'm going to be setting my entire face with the Soft Focus Effect finishing powder from Black Radiance. And this is in the color Milk Chocolate. That's the shade that I'm using. I will not be going in with any liquid foundation just because honestly I really don't use liquid foundation anymore, especially in the summertime. But, you know, it depends on the situation. If I want that full on beat, then I might use foundation. But today we're not doing that. And then I'm going to be setting my under eye using the Fenty Pro Filter powder in the shade Honey. This is my absolute favorite setting powder, especially for dark skin, this particular shade. And then for my contour, I'm going to be using Black Radiance pressed powder in the color Ebony. And then for my blush, I'm going to be using some random eyeshadows from a palette, but it's discontinued, so I really feel like there's no purpose in showing you. But you can find similar colors, and I'll show you the colors that I use and, you know, kind of figure out how to make that work for yourself with palettes that you have. So that's everything that I'm going to be using for today. And then I'm just going to put on a clear gloss and a dark brown lip liner. That's like my go-to look whenever I want to do my makeup. So yeah, so don't say I didn't tell you nothing, all right? Also, I did my eyebrows off camera just because I was not about to sit here and play with y'all. I am the worst at doing my eyebrows and multitasking. Like, I need all of the energy and focus on making sure that they're as even as possible. The product actually has dried out, so I use Duraline from Inglot to revive it, and it gives like the perfect color for me. I feel like my brows are dark enough to where they show up on my skin, because sometimes when I use a pencil, I feel like I can barely see my eyebrows, and so a lot of times it does not relay very well in photos and videos. Looks like I got no eyebrows. I don't like that. I don't like that. That's the story with the brows, but now let's get into the story. So Gavin Smith was born on December 10th, 1954. in the heart of San Fernandino, Valley, which is nestled away in Southern California. So he's a SoCal baby. And he attended Van Nuys High School, where he achieved star status as a basketball player there. And he was a part of the team in the 1970s. So Gavin's early success with basketball would eventually allow him to make his first appearance in the public spotlight when he was named a second-team All-American by Parade magazine during his senior year in 1973. So in addition to having amazing athletic capabilities, Gavin was also one of God's favorites. He is what you would consider the typical Californian man. Like when you think of someone who's originally from Southern California, you think of someone who has sandy blonde hair, bright eyes, nice smile, super tanned. But what really truly made him one of God's favorites is the fact that he stood at a whopping 6'6". So yeah, he was definitely one of his favorites. So after graduating high school, Gavin's exceptional talent granted him an invitation to attend the University of California at Los Angeles, aka UCLA. And there is where he was playing under one of the renowned coaches by the name of John Wooden. From an early age, Gavin, like many other basketball players at the school, had one dream in mind, and that was to make it to the NBA. So in 1975, which would be his sophomore year in college, Gavin was a part of the team that secured the NCAA championship for that year. So with all of these victories under his belt, Gavin was pretty much on his way to being a potential prospect for the NBA draft. But unfortunately for Gavin, life delivered its first setback when he failed to be selected during the NBA draft. And this came as a major shock and blow to his coach, his family, his friends, but most of all, himself. So after learning that his dreams of being in the NBA were going to be demolished, Gavin kind of went into somewhat of a depression. Not really a super long depression, but he just kind of needed some time away from his friends and family to kind of, accept the fate that he was now going to live. At the time, he really didn't have a backup plan because that's how confident and dedicated he was to playing ball. And a lot of his friends and family just couldn't believe that he was not going to be in the NBA. I feel like he wanted to be the next Larry Bird, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So in order for Gavin to reset and just get his life back on track, he decided to transfer schools, and he ended up attending the University of Hawaii, where he would complete the rest of his college and basketball career. So while Gavin was in Hawaii, he also tried his hand at being a caddy at a high society golf club. And that is where he would get a second chance at a new career. So during his stay there, Gavin came across a number of prominent figures in the film industry, which ultimately led him to consider a career in the same field. Okay, so now we're gonna have to take off this scarf so that I make sure my forehead matches the rest of my face. That hair laid, babes. It is laid. You hear me? Laid. Okay. Proud of that. So initially, Gavin started off in the film industry working in front of the camera, and he eventually would debut on a television show called Elmer Leonard's Glitz. But later on, he found himself landing other small roles, including becoming a stuntman. Along the way, in January of 1989, Gavin crossed paths with a woman named Lisa, and the connection sparked a whirlwind of romance, and by November of that same year, the two ended up tying the knot. And I love that. I love when a man dates with a purpose, dates with intention. You don't waste the girl's time. That is just a beautiful thing, you know? You meet your man, in less than a year, you guys are together. I love that. I love love. So soon after they got married, they wasted no time with starting a family, and the couple would welcome 3 sons into the world who mostly looked identical to their father. So again, God's favorites times 3. and they all had the same athletic capabilities as well. Honestly, it's kind of eerie how similar everyone in the family looks. Like, even Lisa and Gavin kind of look like they could have been brother and sister or first cousins. Like, it's just so eerie how much they all looked alike. So the family appeared to be the epitome of a picture-perfect family, as the boys and Gavin lived a free-spirited life. However, Lisa was a bit of the opposite. She was more of like a serious personality type. And so she found it increasingly challenging to handle a significant part of the family's finances, as Gavin shifted between various jobs. So consequently, upon her request, Gavin decided to leave his acting career and seek a more stable job, because she was looking at those numbers and, you know, she had to let Gavin know, like, if you do not switch jobs and quickly, we are going to be swimming in a pool of debt, okay? You know, you had a nice little run with your gigs. We gave that a shot, but now we really need to put our best foot forward and find something so that we can stay afloat, because these gigs are just not cutting it anymore. So in 1994, he secured a job with 20th Century Fox in the distribution department, where he was tasked with ensuring that films got to the theaters that they were scheduled to appear in. So back then, more than likely, they had like the physical roll of film and it had to be delivered to the theaters. I don't know if that's still how they do it these days or if everything is just digital, but I would imagine it's probably digital now. So despite the fact that Gavin didn't have any experience in this role, he learned fairly quickly. And because he was such a fast learner, he was able to move up. So by 2012, which is just 4 years later, Gavin reached the position of regional branch manager for 20th Century Fox, overseeing theaters in Dallas as well as Oklahoma City. So given the fact that So given the fact that Gavin's salary increased drastically once he reached the regional branch manager role, it was quite easy for Lisa to go ahead and quit her job and just be a stay-at-home mom. So with all of this new money coming in, the family spared no expenses. They ended up buying a ton of new luxuries, including a new house in West Hills area of the Valley. If you know about the Valley, you know. However, even though things seemed to be going on the up and up, all of the great things that were happening in the Smith family would soon come to a halt. Gavin was experiencing excruciating back pain for quite a while, a couple of years, and it was so intense that he actually had to start taking opiates for the pain. And unfortunately, like a lot of other people who take opiates, Gavin became addicted to taking the painkillers. So simultaneously, the Smith family would suffer even further when the real estate market decided to crash as well, resulting in a decline in home values and the burden of hefty mortgage payments. So as more and more problems stacked up, Lisa and Gavin's marriage began to fall apart as well. And I guess that's true what the saying goes, more money, more problems. So Gavin's character is naturally to be a responsible person. So outside of the drug addiction, he was pretty much a well-rounded individual. So he took it upon himself to re-enroll into a rehab program, which would actually be the same program that he initially started at back in 2008. Now, during this time, like I said, Lisa and Gavin's marriage was suffering heavily, and so they did decide to separate temporarily, but they were still legally married, and they wanted to remain together for the sake of the children. And, you know, Gavin was still very much involved in the boys' lives, but as far as him and Lisa was concerned, Lisa just really wasn't having it. She didn't like the fact that he was becoming someone different and was really hoping that the rehab would fix everything. So like I said, Gavin and Lisa, although they weren't together, Gavin was still very involved in the boys' lives. He would go on to continue with his daily routines, such as picking them up and dropping them off at school. However, on the morning of May 1st, 2012, Gavin failed to pick up his sons. So despite the status of their relationship, that seemed pretty out of character for Gavin, and Lisa did become concerned, so she ended up reporting his sudden absence to police. So at first, no one took Lisa seriously because, again, they did separate technically. So they just assumed that Gavin was living his newfound life and just wanted to get a couple of days away from the family, and he would eventually resurface. So after a couple of days of not hearing from Gavin, police started to think that maybe there was something behind what Lisa was stating, and they went ahead and labeled him as missing and put an APB out for his jet black Mercedes, which had also apparently gone missing as well. So at this point, the investigation would start by looking through Gavin's phone to determine if maybe he had reached out to someone, or when's the last time he was active within his phone, so they could get a more clear timeline of when something could have possibly happened to him. And during looking through their phone, they come across this woman by the name of Chandrika. Now, y'all, when you see Chandrika, you're going to be like, that's Chandrika? Yo, for a second, I thought I looked at the wrong picture, and I had to go back, and I was like, oh, okay, that's her. When they went through his phone, they saw several phone calls to and from Chandrika Cade to be exact. Now, Gavin knows Chandrika because of their initial encounter at the rehab center. So when he enrolled back in 2008, that's where they initially met. And they kind of hit it off right away. They got along pretty well, and basically they were trauma bonding, which is not really the best way to meet people. So anyway, Gavin and Chandrika crossed paths at the rehab center back in 2008 when he first enrolled there. And Miss Chandrika was there for alcoholism. So she was trying to beat the liquid courage. So at first the relationship was like pretty friendly. It was just light conversations, but it quickly spiraled into a romantic relationship. I mean, again, Gavin was a good looking guy. Chandrika was a good looking woman. So it was inevitable that they would probably pair up. Not to say that two good looking people can't just be friends, but I mean, it sounded like they were trauma bonding and it was bound to happen. But in addition to this newfound relationship that they found themselves in, Chandrika also had her own personal problems, and one of those was her husband. Yeah, Chandrika was definitely married, but at the time that they met, she claimed that they were broken up or separated, or basically they were not involved with one another. But unfortunately, because neither one of them could afford to live on their own, they still remained underneath the same roof. Her husband, who was also a drug dealer, his name was John Creech. And not only was he a drug dealer, but he was a dangerous one. So John was no stranger to the law. He basically had charges related to illicit drug sales as well as several other offenses. The police definitely were very familiar with him. So when John discovered that Chandrika's intention was to leave him for Gavin, he was not having that. This was definitely one of those cases of, if I can't have you, nobody else can. Oh, also, real quick, you guys, let me show you the blush color that I'm using. Like I told you before, I'm just using my eyeshadow palette. This is the Artistry Vault palette. And this is discontinued now for a few years, which is why I kind of really didn't even want to share that. But these are the two colors right here that I'm using. They kind of look washed out because the light is so freaking bright. Let me see if I can get closer. Maybe y'all can see the true colors. I don't know, but one is like a light orange and the other one is like a blood orange. So I mixed those two and that is my blush. But now that we're approaching fall, I feel like I should go a little more on the purple / maroon side. So I might add in this other color called Smile, which is like a purple shade. Ooh, that's pretty. Okay, we're gonna rock with that. Alright, so anyway, back to the story. So like I said, he was not having that. He was not about to let his wife leave him for another man that she met in rehab. That just wasn't gonna happen. So once he found out that she was having this affair with Gavin, John became enraged. He started going crazy. He became abusive towards Chandrika, and he even threatened to tell Lisa, which was Gavin's wife. Because like I said, they were separated, but they were still together. But because of his addiction, that's kind of what drew them apart. So she still cared very much for her husband, but she just couldn't be with him under those circumstances. And John knew that if he reported what was going on to Lisa, that it would potentially destroy Gavin's life. And that's exactly what he wanted to do, because he felt like that's what Gavin was doing to him. So when John stated that he was going to tell Lisa about this affair, Gavin and Chandrika quickly realized that they did not want that to happen, especially Gavin, obviously, because Chandrika don't got nothing to lose. I mean, her man already knows, so it is what it is. But Gavin did not want Wynn to get back to his wife, so they quickly ended the affair. But one thing Gavin doesn't realize is that John is a drug dealer, and a lot of these drug dealers you cannot trust. So even though they ended the affair, he still went and told Lisa anyway. Like, did you really think that your mistress's husband was going to do you a solid like that? Yeah, no way. So in any case, he really wanted to stick it to Gavin, because Gavin essentially was destroying his life, so he wanted to destroy Gavin's in return. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to come up in here and steal my wife while you still have one to go home to when you're done using mine. So after John made good on his threat to tell Lisa on Gavin about the affair he was having with his wife, Gavin had to do damage control and basically come to Lisa as a man and apologize for his affair, and then persuade her that the affair was finished and reassure her that it would never happen again. And so he must have done a number on Lisa, because she agreed to give him another chance, and they ended up enrolling in marriage counseling, and for a while it seemed like it was actually working. However, in 2010, things took a turn for the worse when John came across some emails in Chandrika's account going back and forth with none other than California boy himself, Gavin Smith. So despite the fact that both of them denied being in an affair, there was evidence that proved otherwise. And so now John is livid. He is beyond angry. He is beyond enraged. I don't even know what you want to call it, but he then decided to email Gavin back from Chandrika's account and basically told him to count your days. But let me not even put words in John's mouth. Let me read to you the exact words that he stated. So he emailed Gavin stating, quote, "I'm going to get you, Gavin. Your wife is getting a copy of this email as well, you effing old prick." End quote. I mean, I definitely feel for him, because why are you continuously messing around with my wife? But he really needs to have the energy for Chandrika, not Gavin, because Gavin does not owe John any loyalty whatsoever, but she does. So clearly she doesn't want to be there anymore. So either you're going to have to sit there and endure what she's doing, or y'all are going to have to find a way to separate, even if that means financially struggling, because y'all can't keep moving like this. So the dynamic of Chandrika and John's relationship was honestly quite confusing, because some areas I read that they were together, while in other areas it stated that they were in fact separated or even divorced. And I think it's important to know what the true status was, because then that also determines whether John's actions were justifiable or not. And when I say justified, I mean validating his feelings toward the situation. The physical abuse is never okay, regardless of what's happening in anyone's relationship. So once Lisa received the email from John through Chandrika's email, she confronted Gavin about the affair and also confronted him about the threats that John was making towards him. And this is where I feel like, although Lisa was the brains of the family, she lost a lot of brain cells for what she was about to do next. So Lisa took matters into her own hands to try and clean up the mess that Gavin was severely making. So in December of 2010, Lisa took 2 of her sons to go and visit John at his home. John, the dangerous drug dealer John, the one who's threatening to kill your husband. You thought it was a good idea to bring your children into the mix of your marital problems. That is wild to me. Why would you even want to put them in crossfire? I don't know. She wasn't thinking clearly. So like I said, that's why she lost a lot of brain cells for that, because that is mind-boggling. But in any case, not only did she take them to the house to have a powwow with John to hopefully like calm him down and get him to, you know, leave them alone. I think her thought process was that if he saw the children, he would have some sympathy for Gavin and be like, look, I saw your children. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to do whatever the threats were, but you got to leave my wife alone. And I'm thinking that's the process she had in her brain, right? But instead of going there as an adult to adult, she sends her boys to the man's house. Like, she takes them, they all go together, but she waits behind in the car and sends her sons, her underage kids, to go and talk to this grown man who is a dangerous drug dealer to plead for their father's life. Are you mad? Am I the only one who sees a problem with this, or are y'all in agreement with me? Because I really am not, it's not connecting. The dots are just not connecting for me on this. So at this point, Lisa is sitting in the car and she's crossing fingers that things do not go left with sending her boys to the home of the man that is married to the woman that her husband is screwing. Like, when you really say it out loud and put things into perspective, why would you insert your sons into this mess? But there they were. She in the car, the boys at the door, and John is standing there listening, infuriated with the audacity that Gavin's family has to come and beg for his life, even though Gavin continuously is stirring the pot in his. So they're crying, they're sobbing, and just really pleading for him to give them another chance on behalf of Gavin. And, you know, against John's better judgment, he decides that he's going to let it slide. And he literally tells them, you saved your father's life. Lisa lucked out. So once they cleaned up shop, Gavin and Chandrika continued their affair. Can you say you're surprised at this point? But needless to say, after this incident, Gavin and Lisa separated, and Chandrika officially separated from John when she found out that he was messing around with an 18-year-old girl. So it's just interesting that he had all this energy for Gavin, but he was literally doing what Gavin was doing. Now, I don't know if this 18-year-old was in the picture beforehand or after the fact, but I mean, this far in, if you're sleeping with someone else and you know your wife is cheating, why do you still have the same energy? Just let that go. Clearly she doesn't want to be there. So, and neither do you. It just will never make sense. They really had no regards for anyone else. Gavin didn't care about how this affair was breaking up his family, and Chandrika didn't care about how crazy it was making John. So for a moment, it seemed like everything settled down and everything was going back to normal, but you know how they say it's always the calm before the storm, and that's exactly what was happening here. So, as I mentioned, Chandrika and Gavin reinitiated their affair, picked up from where they left off, and they would continuously meet up. Now, what Chandrika didn't know was, even though she had left John, but they were still living together, but she basically ended things romantically with him, she was unaware that he was tracking her phone. And so with that said, she got caught leaving the house to go meet up with Gavin. Surprise, surprise. So on the night of May 1st, 2012, Chandrika left the house to meet up with Gavin at an empty parking lot. Now, despite omitting a lot of the details of why she was meeting him, John was well aware of why she was going over there and pretty much forbade her to go. But she wasn't having any of that because, again, she was done with him, so she was free to do as she pleased. But I don't know if they were legally divorced yet or legally separated, or if this was just like verbal communication that she was done with him. But in any case, John demanded that she stop seeing him, and she again reiterated that they were done, and also reminded him of the affair that he had on her with the 18-year-old girl. I mean, regardless of how old the girl was, doesn't matter. It's the fact that he still had the affair, but he's still keeping up this energy as if he's 100% innocent. That's the crazy part of it all. Okay, so the next bit of details are kind of a little confusing to me because I was trying to figure out exactly like how they were going to this empty parking lot, but I'm assuming Gavin came to pick up Chandrika and then the two of them headed to this empty parking lot together. So in pursuit, John hopped in their gold minivan because, you know, again, they don't have a lot of money. So I'm assuming they only had one vehicle to share between the two of them. And he basically followed in pursuit, you know, like they left and then he left shortly after. But by the time he reached the parking lot, Gavin and Chandrika were getting hot and heavy in the passenger seat of his car. So seeing this visual for John literally had him blacking out. So it was a wrap at this point. He was done giving chances to Gavin and he was gonna show him that he meant business. So he approached them head on, swung the door open, pulled out Chandrika and pushed her out of the way and just started going ham on Gavin, literally just blow for blow. He just saw red. There was just nothing that you could do to stop him at this point. He was continuously giving blows to Gavin in the head and neck area. So while John is beating Gavin to a pulp, Chandrika manages to escape by taking the minivan back to their house, where she barricades herself inside of the home and has a knife in her hand, terrified of what John could do to her once she gets there, or once he gets there. But in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, girl, you don't think that maybe you should just call the police and have him escorted out of the home, restraining order perhaps? You know, that way you could just have the house to yourself. Granted, you won't be able to afford it, but shit, that's better than living in fear. This mascara is so good. Ooh. So over the next couple of days, there would be a series of horrible events that happened. So on the early morning of May 2nd, so literally the very next morning, John would make his first phone call to a friend by the name of Jorge Velez to assist him with getting rid of John's Mercedes, which obviously had all of the DNA, the blood splatter all over the front passenger seat. And after circling around for the better part of the day trying to find hiding places, John just really wasn't satisfied with anything that they had found. So he reached out and made a second phone call to another friend, and that friend's name was Stan McQuay. And he asked Stan to stash the Mercedes in his garage, in which Stan did not question anything. He simply just allowed him to do it. And that's where he would end up leaving the body of Gavin Smith along with his car for 5 days. So during that 5-day period, he as in John, would eventually convince yet another friend, and her name was Raina. Now, Raina was a woman who took care of Chandrika's mother when she was terminally ill, and they were all living under the same roof. So they had, history together. And so he asked Raina, or convinced her rather, to rent out a U-Haul truck and a storage unit, and she agreed to do so. So once she did that for him, then he circled back to Stan's garage and moved the body. And then as for the body, he disposed of it. He took it. So the memory card wanted to see my downfall, but not today. But anyways, let's go ahead. Setting my face with my favorite setting spray. This is from Morphe. It's their setting mist, and it smells so good too. I love it. I need to buy more. So in any case, John convinced Raina to get a van and storage unit in her name. So he went back to Stan's place to move the Mercedes from his garage to the storage unit, and then he took the van with Gavin's body in it and made his way up to Palmdale, where he would bury Gavin's body somewhere in the mountains. And then, like I said, he left the Mercedes to be hidden inside of the storage unit. So at this point, the investigation is slowly but surely unfolding. However, the police could not make any arrests because they didn't have Gavin or Gavin's car. But they were starting to put together the pieces to the puzzle alongside with interrogating Chandrika. She was kind of able to fill in the blanks of what may have possibly happened to Gavin.
Facing defendant John Creech, the man charged with murdering their father, Gavin Smith. Sons Austin and Evan Smith testify about a crisis that had been their family secret. Learning that Dad, the Fox executive and former Bruin basketball player, was having an affair with Chandrika Cade Creech, Creech's wife.
I was just begging him not to harm my family.
Were those your words to him?
Yes.
They detail their visit in December 2010 to Creech's home after their mother told them that Creech was a dangerous man. That visit happening nearly 2 years before their dad disappeared. The sons recalled Creech's words later as detectives search for clues. Austin testifies he was 14 years old, crying to Creech, who was livid.
Still furious. The entire experience, he was angry. I said, I'm in 8th grade. I'm too young to lose my dad.
About their dad?
That he was the scum of the earth, that he was a piece of shit, that he was a predator and that he preyed on his wife.
And if Smith contacted his wife again?
That he'd kill him.
Creech, now a convicted drug dealer, made statements that scared the sons.
He was threatening, saying, that his boys had been following my dad and that he knows where my dad's at all times. He knew where my little brother went to school.
Smith then ended the affair, but in 2012 resumed it. Creech allegedly attacking Smith when he found the pair together in Smith's car.
And then fast forward a year later, LAPD received a tip that there was a Mercedes hidden in a storage unit. And then half a year later, the man and his dog who were hiking at the beginning of this video, whose name was Rocky, came across the remains of a skull and the rest of the body in a shallow grave, and they confirmed it through dental records to be that of Gavin Smith. So in September of 2017, despite the countless evidence, I cannot read. So in September of 2017, despite all of the evidence pointing to premeditated murder, John Creech was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 11 years in prison for killing Gavin Smith. It's not originally what prosecution was going for, which was first-degree murder, but at least they were able to stick something to him. As far as Chandrika, Stan, Reina, and Jorge, all of them received immunity in exchange for cooperation with the investigation and testifying against John Creech. And that, you guys, is the story of Gavin Smith. So I want to know, what lesson have y'all taken from today's story? I feel like it's the same lesson that you pretty much learned from all other cheating scandals and domestic violence cases. When things get bad, it's time for you to go. If things are not working out for you, you should just exit stage left. There's no need for you to create all of this havoc, because you cannot control another person's feelings and how they will act on said feelings. I do want to send condolences to the family of Gavin Smith, because he didn't deserve to die, just like a lot of people in other cases that I've talked about. So let me know down in the comment section, do you think that it was fair for everyone to get immunity with the exception of John Creech? Or do you think all of them should have received some sort of punishment as well? And do you think that John was rightfully charged for manslaughter? Or do you believe that it should have been? So again, let me know down in the comments. I'm genuinely interested to hear what you guys think. Me personally, I do think manslaughter was the right charge. I don't think John intended to actually ever unalive Gavin, but I do think he did wanted to teach him a lesson, shake shit up a little bit, and it just got out of hand. His emotions just took over. But like I said, I want to know what y'all think. And also, this is going up on Thanksgiving, so I do want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Please take a moment to appreciate all the people in your life, because you never know when the last day will be with them or when they will have the last day with you. Unfortunately for the Smith family, they will never get to spend another Thanksgiving, let alone another day with Gavin ever again. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the food that you're waiting on, and I hope your backs get as big as a football field. Don't forget to check out some of the other videos through the playlist that should be on the screen by now, and subscribe to the channel. Is free, and I appreciate everyone who stuck it out to the end. Stay safe out there, you guys, and I will see you in the next video.